We are going to continue to fight to repeal this thing.
On January 3, we'll start working for repeal, and we'll do it with all of you.
We need to lead the largest repeal movement in the history of this country.
You know, that's actually not going to happen. If you hate health reform and someone asks you for money because they say they're going to repeal health reform, that person is ripping you off. They really can't repeal it. I mean, some Republicans are even admitting that now.
What you have to do is be politically honest. If the Republicans win a majority in the House and Senate next year, they will not be able to repeal the bill. The president would veto it.
Our view is that we should repeal and replace the bill with the solutions that we think actually work. Obviously, the president will not sign a repeal bill that the Congress passes, so that's more of a symbol.
Oh, that's more of a symbol. Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee got even more blunt about it today, telling an audience at Vanderbilt University, quote, "The fact is, that's not going to happen, okay?" Okay. Despite the impossibility problem that they are running up against with the We'll Repeal It fundraising drive, some other opponents of health reform are trying out another futile, purely symbolic political stunt in order to dramatize how much they hate health reform. They want to sue the government to try to get health reform overturned. Now, no one seriously thinks these lawsuits have any chance of success. For example, when the University of Washington tried last night to host a debate between legal experts on whether or not health reform is constitutional, they couldn't find anyone to take the it's unconstitutional side. Even legal experts who didn't like health reform conceded that the lawsuits against it are pointless. Because the lawsuits are widely believed to be legally pointless, the state attorneys general who are bringing these suits are feeling a little bit of pressure now about how much taxpayers' money they're willing to spend on something that has no point. That's just a political stunt. For example, Virginia's astounding new attorney general, Ken the Cooch Cuccinelli, released a statement today defensively explaining that the whole stunt lawsuit that he was bringing against the federal government to overturn health care was only expected to cost Virginia taxpayers a total of $350. This is amazing. Listen to this. Quote, Attorney General Kenneth T. Cuccinelli II today released the cost of the lawsuit his office launched against the federal government over the passage of the Federal Health Care Reform Act. The court filing fee for the case was $350. There has been no additional cost above this amount, as the litigation is being handled entirely by the Attorney General's staff. Wait a minute. The Attorney General and his staff work for free? They're doing this one pro bono? On their own time, with their own office supplies, sitting in their cars in the parking lot or something? Not while they're at work, having their salaries and all their expenses paid for by the good taxpayers of the state of Virginia? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Even more amazing, though, is what's happening in the great state of Georgia. Georgia's Republican Governor Sonny Perdue wanted very badly to get in on the frivolous anti-health reform lawsuit action, but his attorney general, a Democrat named Thurbert Baker, refused, telling the governor in a letter, quote, considering our state's severe budgetary crisis, with vital services like education and law enforcement being cut deeply, I cannot justify a decision to initiate expensive and time-consuming litigation that I believe has no legal merit. In short, this litigation is likely to fail and will consume significant amounts of taxpayers' hard-earned money in the process. Georgia Republicans, however, are not about to let themselves be deprived of their pointless symbolic tool of opposition to health reform. Republicans in the state legislature in Georgia drafted legislation to try to force the attorney general to file that lawsuit that he said was bound to fail and waste money. That bill failed twice. Republican Governor Sonny Perdue wasn't giving up on this pointless exercise either. The governor announced last week that since the real attorney general in his state refused to sue the government over health reform, he intended to appoint a special attorney general just to file that lawsuit. But now it looks like Republicans in the state house have one-upped even that move by Georgia's governor. A Republican legislator has officially introduced a resolution to impeach Georgia's attorney general. To be clear, they want to impeach Attorney General Thurbert Baker because he says he doesn't want to waste taxpayers' money on what he believes is a redundant, frivolous lawsuit that has no chance of success. They say that's grounds for impeachment. Joining us now for the interview is the Attorney General of Georgia, Mr. Thurbert Baker. Mr. Baker is also running for the Democratic nomination for governor in his state. Mr. Attorney General, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
The move on the part of Republicans in your state to impeach you seems fairly symbolic. There are just a few days left in the legislative session. Nobody really expects them to be able to come up with the votes. But even if it is just symbolic, what's your reaction to this?
Very surprising. You know, I've been the Attorney General now in this state for 13 years. I would have never thought that there would be an effort in the legislature of this state to impeach the sitting Attorney General for doing his job. And oh, by the way, for telling the truth. It makes no sense to me. At a time when we've got huge budget crisis here in Georgia, when we're laying off teachers, when we're cutting back on school days, when we've got huge transportation and water issues, we can't find jobs, we've got a huge economy problem, we're spending time in these last few legislative days trying to figure out how to impeach the Attorney General for saying that there is no basis to file this lawsuit.
Can you tell us briefly why you think there's no basis to file this lawsuit, why you decided that this wasn't worth your time?
Our governor asked me to take a look at the question and to file a lawsuit on behalf of Georgia. I took a look at the Constitution of the United States. I took a look at applicable law. I looked at all of the claims that are being raised around the country. I could find absolutely no basis to file a lawsuit. We took a look at the Commerce Clause. The legislature has a broad, expansive power when we talk about the Commerce Clause. There's been a lot of discussion about the government taxing and spending for this effort. Listen, that question has been settled since 1937 in this country. Congress absolutely has the power to do it. Now, I understand that there is a lot of policy debate across this nation. I understand there are a lot of budgetary issues involved. We have those same issues here in Georgia, but we should not confuse that with the right of the United States Congress to enact the measure that it did. That was my answer to the governor. I don't think we have a basis for it, and if we're going to go down that road, in my opinion at least, we're going to be spending hard-earned taxpayer dollars in a time of budget crisis in this state. I couldn't justify doing it.
Let me ask you about an argument that I will admit to having just made fun of. The argument of Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. He's claiming that his lawsuit against the federal government to overturn health care will only cost $350, because that's what the filing fee is. To me, as you could tell in my introduction, I find that ridiculous. But as an Attorney General of a state, does that argument from him make any sense to you?
We filed a lot of lawsuits in my office. We've defended a lot of lawsuits in my office. It's impossible to have a lawsuit where there are no inherent costs. Every time you're pulling employees away from their appointed duties to file a lawsuit and to engage in this kind of activity, there's going to be cost. Lawyers don't work for free, not even lawyers who work in-house. So I'm not aware of any way that a lawsuit can be filed, even if we do it in-house, where it doesn't cost the taxpayer some money. We could have our lawyers off engaged in other areas that are going to be critical to the budget of this state, to talk about teachers and education. Any of those areas where we could have our lawyers applied would be a better use of the employees and the staff. But I'm not aware of any way that you can do this without there being some inherent cost.
Me neither. And I'm not a lawyer. Mr. Baker, let me also ask you about something that broke today that was new in this whole debate, and that's that the governor and attorney general of the state of Oregon announced that they will not sue the federal government over health reform, but that rather they will proactively defend the health bill in court. I wonder if, given your stance, if the Oregon officials have reached out to you, if you would even consider joining their efforts to defend the bill.
Well, the Oregon Attorney General has not reached out to me. But I can almost understand what's going on. That governor and that Attorney General looked at the same Constitution that I looked at. They came away with the same conclusion, that given the broad, expansive powers of the federal government and its ability to enact laws, especially in this area, areas that impact interstate and intrastate commerce, that they came away with the same idea and the conclusion that I did, that there is no basis for moving in this direction. So now they're going to move forward and try and assist the federal government in defending against these lawsuits. They must have came to the same conclusion that I did.
Mr. Thurbert Baker, the Attorney General of the state of Georgia for the past 13 years now. I should mention again, running for the Democratic nomination for governor in Georgia. Thank you very much for your time tonight, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you.